Oh, you felt that, didn't you? That cold ripple down the back of your neck. That invisible hand gripping your spine before the betrayal even had a name. You felt it. Before the phone call, before the lie was spoken, before the mask slipped off the face you trusted, something inside you, something ancient and untamed, something feral and precise, something they will never understand because they've never possessed it. It already knew. It already saw the ending before the first act was over. And before we dive any deeper, if this channel has ever set fire to something inside your chest, if these words have ever made you feel seen in a world designed to make you invisible, then you need to know we wrote it all down. 2 books, 2 weapons forged from everything you've survived. The Crown of Ash, a dark motivational field manual for the exiled Grim Grit Edition 1, and the Quiet Edge Grim Grit Edition 2. These aren't self-help, these are self-woos. Links are in the description below. Now you're here, not because someone told you to click, not because an algorithm pushed you forward. You're here because that thing inside you, that sixth sense, that silent alarm system buried beneath your ribs and wired into the marrow of your instincts, it brought you. It dragged you to this exact moment, because what I'm about to tell you is going to permanently, irreversibly change how you see every single person who ever smiled at you with venom behind their teeth. So sit down, lock the door, turn the volume all the way up. Because tonight, we're not whispering, we're roaring. Let's set the record straight before we go even one step further. You are not crazy. You were never crazy. Every single time you felt that twitch in your gut, every time your chest tightened around someone who was smiling too wide while their eyes stayed too still, every time your instinct screamed, something is wrong here, and the whole room, the whole table, the whole circle told you it was all in your head. You were right. You were right. They called you paranoid. They called you too sensitive. They said you were overthinking, overreacting, overcomplicating things that were supposedly simple. But the truth, the raw and undeniable truth, is that you were the only one in the room who could smell the smoke before the fire even started burning. You were the only one whose internal compass didn't need evidence, didn't need proof, didn't need a signed confession to know the direction of danger, and that single terrifying gift terrified them more than anything you could have ever said out loud or done in the open. Because you can argue with words, you can twist logic, you can manipulate facts, but you absolutely cannot deceive a soul that reads energy the way a scholar reads ancient text, fluently, instinctively, and without mercy. Here's where it gets dark. Here's where the blood starts to show beneath the bandages they thought would hold forever. Because they didn't just doubt your sixth sense, no, that would have been too simple, too lazy. Too passive for people like them. They tested it deliberately, strategically, surgically, with the patience of predators and the precision of people who had studied your emotional blueprint for months. They placed traps wrapped in affection. They set up elaborate scenarios designed to make you question your own gut, to second-guess the very instinct that had never once lied to you. They fed you half-truths, seasoned with just enough sincerity to make the poison taste sweet going down. They watched your eyes when they lied to your face. They studied your reactions when they twisted the story just slightly enough to see if you'd catch the edit. They created chaos, beautiful, organized chaos, and then stood back with folded arms and calm, patient faces, waiting, watching. measuring whether your instincts would catch the knife before it hit your back. And every single time your sixth sense flickered and your face changed by even a fraction, they were ready with the same rehearsed, weaponized lying. You're imagining things, but here's the part they didn't plan for. Here's the chapter they forgot to write. Here's the part that shattered their entire experiment and left them bleeding from the inside out with no one to stitch the wound. Your sixth sense didn't just detect the threat, it cataloged it. It archived it with timestamps and footnotes. It recorded every micro-expression, every half-second hesitation, every tone shift, every carefully placed word that didn't match the energy radiating from behind it. You weren't just feeling something was off, you were building a case without even knowing it. Your subconscious was constructing an entire courthouse complete with judge, jury, and evidence locker, while your conscious mind was still being gaslit into thinking the building didn't exist. And when the moment finally came, when the final betrayal was loud enough for even the deaf to hear, and obvious enough for even the blind to see, you didn't collapse in shock. You didn't crumble. You didn't give them the performance they'd been rehearsing their reaction to for weeks. You stood there steady, calm, almost eerily composed. Because deep down in the basement of your being, you'd known all along. Your sixth sense had already processed this loss months before it officially happened. The tears they expected never came. The breakdown they had prepared their sympathy faces for never arrived, because you'd already cried those tears in silence in the dark alone, while they were still rehearsing their next act and fitting their next mask. And oh, how that destroyed them completely, irreparably, because they had built their entire strategy, their entire psychological architecture around the moment of your breakdown. They had rehearsed in their minds exactly how they would comfort you with hollow words, how they would say, "I told you so," without technically saying it. How they would position themselves as the rational ones, the stable ones, the emotionally mature ones who never let feelings cloud their crystal clear judgment. But when you stood there unmoved, unbroken, unflinching, looking at them with eyes that said, "I already knew this was coming and I chose to let you reveal yourself," the floor beneath their performance cracked wide open. The audience they'd been playing for vanished. The applause they expected, the validation, the relief of finally being proven right about you, it all turned into a silence so deafening, so thick, so suffocating, that it echoed in their bones for weeks and settled into their dreams for months. Your sixth sense didn't just protect you, it humiliated them, not with words, not with confrontation, not with revenge or exposure or any of the reactions they prepared contingency plans for, but with the most terrifying weapon a human being can wield. The unshakable, undeniable truth that you saw every single move before they made it. And you chose to sit back and let them reveal themselves on their own stage, in their own time, with their own rope wrapped around their own necks. Let's talk about that blood, shall we? Because this isn't poetic decoration. This isn't metaphor dressed in leather trying to look tough. The blood I'm talking about is as real as anything that's ever stained a surface. It's the blood of truth, the blood that spills when years of carefully constructed lies are finally cut open by something sharper than evidence. The blood that stains the hands of everyone who thought they could operate on your life without you feeling the incision, without you noticing the anesthesia wearing off, without you realizing the surgery was never meant to heal you, but to remove the parts of you that made you dangerous to them. Every whisper they planted behind your back, every alliance they built against you in rooms you weren't invited into, every narrative they twisted and polished to make you the villain of a story you didn't even know was being written and distributed. All of it bled the moment your sixth sense struck back. You didn't need a confession. You didn't need screenshots or text messages or receipts or third-party validation from someone brave enough to tell you the truth. Your instincts walked into the courtroom of your life, laid the evidence on the table without saying a word, and the verdict was unanimous. Guilty. Every last one of them. Guilty of underestimating the one person in the room who was paying attention with more than just their eyes. And here is what haunts them now. Here is the part that keeps them tossing and turning at 3 to road in the morning, staring at ceilings that feel lower and heavier than they used to. They cannot figure out how you knew. They have replayed their own performances 1,000 times from every possible angle. They have analyzed their own lies with forensic intensity, checked their own alibis for holes, reviewed their own scripts for flaws, and they cannot find the crack. They cannot locate the exact moment, the precise second where your sixth sense intercepted their signal and decoded their entire operation. Because the truth is, there was no single moment. It was all of them. Every single interaction was a data point. Your instincts were collecting and connecting. It was the way their laughter arrived half a second too late, just slightly off rhythm. The way their eyes moved to the left when they said, "I promise." The way their body leaned away from you, creating invisible distance. When their words leaned in with fabricated warmth, you were reading a language they didn't even know they were speaking. A language older than any alphabet. A language of vibration, of frequency, of electromagnetic truth that your body decoded fluently, effortlessly, mercilessly, while your brain was still processing their pleasantries and trying to convince yourself that everything was fine. That is what makes a sixth sense truly dangerous. Not that it knows, but that it knows before knowing is even logically possible. It operates in the realm of precognition, not prediction. It doesn't guess based on available data. It receives transmissions from a bandwidth that most people don't even know exists. And what it received from them was a broadcast of deceit. So loud, so constant, so arrogantly careless, so offensively sloppy that even your quietest, most generous instinct couldn't ignore it or explain it away anymore. They thought they were clever. They genuinely believed their masks were custom-fitted, hand-stitched, designer deception, tailored specifically to your blind spots and emotional tendencies. But your sixth sense has infrared vision that penetrates every layer of performance. It doesn't see the mask. It sees the heat behind it, the racing pulse of someone midline, the shallow breath of someone performing sincerity, the micro-sweat of a conscience trying to drown itself in justification and rehearsed rationalizations. And when you looked at them, really looked at them with the full force of your awakened perception, you weren't seeing a friend. You weren't seeing a lover. You weren't seeing a trusted colleague. You were seeing a threat dressed in familiarity, wrapped in history, perfumed with shared memories. And your entire nervous system went into quiet, devastating, stone-cold alert mode. Let me tell you something about silence that most people will never, not in their entire lifetimes, understand. Most people think silence is emptiness, an absence of sound, an absence of power, an absence of response, a white flag, a retreat, a surrender. But you discovered something that rewrote the entire rulebook of human engagement and interpersonal warfare. You discovered that silence is the loudest, most devastating, most psychologically destructive weapon in the arsenal of someone whose sixth sense has been fully activated and calibrated. Because when you went quiet, when you stopped reacting to provocations designed to trigger you, when you stopped defending yourself against accusations that were crafted to drain your energy and scatter your focus, something shifted in the atmosphere between you and them. The entire dynamic flipped like a table in a room full of cheaters who suddenly realized the dealer has been watching. Suddenly, they were the ones filling the silence with nervous, rambling chatter. Suddenly, they were the ones over-explaining things nobody asked about, over-justifying decisions nobody questioned, over-performing, snorts, their innocence for an audience of one who wasn't even watching anymore. Suddenly, they were the ones studying your face for a reaction that never came, a flinch that never materialized, a wound that never appeared, and that absolute refusal to perform on their stage. That was the exact moment your sixth sense stopped being merely a warning system and became a weapon of mass clarity. You see, they needed you loud. They needed you emotional, chaotic, scattered, reactive, impulsive, spilling your energy into fights that were never meant to be won. Only endured, only survived, only barely escaped. Because as long as you were in defense mode, as long as you were putting out the fires they kept lighting, your sixth sense was distracted from the real operation happening behind the smokescreen. It was busy processing the surface-level drama while the deeper, quieter, more surgical manipulations slid through undetected beneath the noise. That was their entire game plan from the beginning. Flood the radar with emotional interference. Overwhelm the detection system with chaos and confusion. Create enough static, enough arguments, enough crises that the real signal, the real truth gets lost in the storm. But then you did something they never anticipated. You went silent. You pulled back. You stopped giving them your energy like it was free electricity flowing through an outlet they'd been plugging into for years without paying a single bill. And the moment that energy stopped flowing, the radar cleared. The noise dropped to zero. And what your sixth sense showed you in that silence was devastating. Not because it was complicated or layered or difficult to decode, but because it was so painfully, so unbearably, so insultingly simple. They were never confused about you. They were never genuinely trying to understand you or work things out. They were systematically trying to dismantle you piece by piece, reaction by reaction, emotional explosion by emotional explosion. And every argument, every cold shoulder, every sudden mood shift, every passive-aggressive comment disguised as a harmless joke, it was all part of the same coordinated campaign, not organized with formal meetings and strategy documents, but orchestrated through the unspoken, intuitive agreement of people who share the same sickness, the compulsive, addictive, pathological need to maintain control over someone who was never meant to be controlled. And your silence exposed every single thread of it. Not with accusations, not with confrontation, not with a dramatic speech or a public unraveling or a social media expose, but with the terrifying, almost supernatural patience of someone who has stopped playing the game entirely and is now sitting in the stands watching the players destroy each other and themselves in real time without lifting a single finger. You became the mirror they couldn't avoid, no matter which direction they turned. You became the stillness that made their manufactured chaos visible, not just to you, but to everyone around them who had been too distracted by the noise to notice the pattern. You became the calm that revealed their storm was always self-inflicted, always manufactured, always a projection of the tornado spinning inside their own hollow, restless, insatiable chests. And in that silence, your sixth sense did something extraordinary. Something that changed the rules permanently. It stopped warning you. It stopped sending alarms and flares and emergency signals. Not because the danger had passed, but because the danger no longer had access to you. You had evolved past their frequency entirely. You had tuned them out so completely, so permanently, so irreversibly, that their manipulations hit a wall of indifference so thick, so dense, so absolute that they began to wonder in their darkest private moments whether their tactics had ever actually worked on anyone at all. And that crisis of confidence, that catastrophic crumbling of their carefully constructed identity as puppet masters and emotional architects. That was the blood, that was the wound that won't close. That was your sixth sense striking back in the most brutal, most permanent, most psychologically devastating way possible by making you completely, totally, permanently unreachable. Now, let's talk about the watchers. Because the ones who tested your sixth sense were not always the loudest voices in the room, not always the obvious aggressors with their insults and their confrontations and their dramatic provocations. Some of them, the most dangerous ones, never said a single word against you. Not one syllable. Not one raised eyebrow in public. They didn't need to. Their silence was a different kind of weapon entirely. Sharper than any insult. Colder than any betrayal you could name. More lethal than any lie spoken to your face. They sat in the background like intelligence operatives, observing, gathering, cataloging your reactions with surgical precision, mapping your vulnerabilities, your emotional tendencies, your exact pressure points, the precise words and situations that made you flinch or soften or open up. They were the quiet ones at the dinner table, who noticed when your smile didn't quite reach your eyes and filed that observation away for future leverage. The ones who remembered an offhand comment you made 3 months ago about your fears or your insecurities and stored it like classified intelligence to be deployed at the strategically optimal moment. The ones who never attacked you directly, never left their fingerprints on the weapon, but fed ammunition, context, emotional blueprints, and detailed psychological profiles to the ones who did the visible dirty work. Your sixth sense picked them up too, not immediately. Not with the same blaring, unmistakable alarm it reserved for the obvious, loudmouth threats, who announced their intentions with every clumsy move, but with a slow, creeping, bone-deep discomfort that you couldn't name or locate for the longest time. A persistent feeling that someone in your inner circle was watching you the way a collector watches a rare specimen behind glass. Not with love, not with genuine curiosity, but with cold, detached, predatory calculation. And when you finally identified them, when your sixth sense connected the invisible dots between their carefully innocent questions and the chaos that always mysteriously seemed to erupt within days of those conversations, something inside you went cold. Not angry, not vengeful, not dramatic, just cold. The kind of bone-deep, permanent cold that comes from realizing you've been studied, measured, documented, and reported on by someone who was supposed to care about you. Someone who sat at your table, ate your food, laughed at your jokes, and was memorizing your weaknesses the entire time. The kind of cold that retroactively rewrites every warm memory you shared with them and adds a footnote of suspicion and contamination that can never ever be erased, no matter how hard you try. You didn't confront them. You didn't need to. A confrontation would have given them information, would have shown them exactly what you knew and didn't know, would have handed them the map of your awareness so they could navigate around it. Instead, you simply adjusted your orbit. You changed what you shared, what you revealed, what version of yourself you allowed them to access. You gave them the museum tour instead of the backstage pass. Polished glass cases, velvet ropes, a gift shop on the way out, and they felt it. They felt the walls go up, brick by brick, floor by floor. They felt a temperature shift in your presence, like a season changing overnight without warning. And for the first time in their carefully controlled, meticulously curated, obsessively managed existence, they experienced something they had never planned for. They panicked. Not visibly, not loudly, not in any way you could point to or prove, but internally, catastrophically, irreversibly, because they realized with a sickening certainty that settled in their stomach like a stone that they had been detected, not caught, not exposed publicly, not dragged into the light for all to see, but detected privately, silently, completely by a sense they didn't even believe existed in anyone, let alone in. They laughed at your silence until your presence started shaking every room you walked into. They thought you were just another face in the crowd, another shadow passing through their little world. But deep down, something felt different about you from the very beginning. You carried pressure without breaking. You stayed calm while chaos swallowed everybody else. And now reality just smacked them in the face. Every doubt they had about you turned into fear, respect, and confusion. Because the truth is brutal. You were never ordinary. You've been that one from day one. And now they finally see what was standing in front of them. All along they looked at you and made their decision too fast. Before you even had the chance to speak, they already placed limits on your future inside their minds. They judged your silence as weakness, your patience as fear, and your calm energy as something ordinary. That's how people operate when they only understand loud confidence and fake power. They never realize that the most dangerous person in the room is usually the one who doesn't need attention to feel important. While everybody else was busy proving themselves, you were busy building yourself plans. From the very beginning, people underestimated your ability because they couldn't read you. You didn't move like everybody else. You didn't beg for validation. You didn't chase approval from crowds that change opinions every 5 minutes. That confused them. And whenever people feel confused by someone they can't control, they automatically assume that person is less important than they actually are. That's why they laughed too early. That's why they ignored your potential. They thought your quiet nature meant you had no fire inside you. Meanwhile, the entire time you were carrying storms in your mind that would break weaker people instantly. The funny thing is, people only respect results after they appear. Nobody respects the process. Nobody respects the lonely nights, the pressure, the overthinking, the discipline, or the moments you almost gave up but kept moving anyway. They only notice the glow after the darkness is gone. That's why they never saw your evolution happening in real time. Every setback was secretly sharpening you. Every betrayal taught you how people truly operate. Every moment they doubted you forced you to become mentally stronger. They accidentally created the version of you they fear today. You stayed quiet while they talked too much. You stayed focused while they chased distractions. You kept learning while they kept laughing. And slowly, without announcing it, you started becoming impossible to ignore. Your energy changed. Your mindset changed. The way people reacted to your presence started changing too. Suddenly, the same people who once overlooked you began watching your every move. Not because you asked them to, because real power naturally demands attention. The truth that smacked them in the face was simple. You were never weak. You were just patient. There's a massive difference between the two. Weak people break under pressure. Patient people absorb pressure until the perfect moment arrives. And when your moment finally came, it exposed everybody who misjudged you from the start. They expected you to stay average forever. They expected life to crush your confidence. Instead, every hardship turned into fuel. Now they replay old memories in their heads, trying to understand how they missed the signs. But the signs were always there. Your resilience was there. Your intelligence was there. Your intelligence was there. Your hunger was there. They just couldn't recognize greatness before it became obvious. Most people can only believe in something after the world confirms it for them. That's why visionaries, leaders, and powerful minds are almost always underestimated in the beginning. And maybe that was necessary because being underestimated gave you freedom. Freedom to grow without distractions. Freedom to sharpen your mind without fake applause. Freedom to become dangerous without anyone preparing for what you would eventually become. There is something terrifying about a person who no longer feels the need to explain themselves. That kind of silence makes people uncomfortable because they can't predict it, control it, or manipulate it. While everybody else was wasting energy arguing, defending themselves, and trying to win attention, you mastered the art of staying quiet and watching everything. And without realizing it, your silence became more powerful than the noise surrounding you. Gleaned. People thought your silence meant you had nothing to say. They assumed you were weak because you didn't react instantly. In a world addicted to over-explaining and emotional outbursts, calmness looks strange. But what they fail to understand is that silence is not emptiness. Sometimes silence is observation. Sometimes it is discipline. Sometimes it is restraint. And sometimes it is a warning sign that a person has learned more than they reveal. Ben, you started noticing something important about people. The louder they talked, the more they exposed themselves. They revealed their insecurities, their jealousy, their fake confidence, and their desperation for validation. Meanwhile, the less you spoke, the more powerful your presence became. Silence forced people to think about you. It created mystery around your int. They never knew what you were planning, what you were feeling, or how much you truly understood. As started driving them insane, Ben, while others kept showing every card in their hand, you learned to keep yours hidden. That changed the entire game. People can attack predictable behavior, but they struggle against someone they cannot fully read. Your silence protected your energy. It protected your goals. It protected your peace. And most importantly, it protected your focus from people who secretly wanted to distract you from becoming stronger. Pans. There were moments when you wanted to respond. Moments when disrespect burned inside your chest. Moments when you wanted to prove yourself to people who doubted you. But eventually you realized something brutal. Not every battle deserves your voice. Some people only provoke reactions because they feed off emotional chaos. The second you stop giving them access to your emotions, their power disappears completely. That's when silence stops being passive and starts becoming strategic. Your silence also forced you to grow mentally. Instead of constantly talking about your dreams, you started working on them quietly. Instead of announcing every move, you started building in private. And while people underestimated your calmness, you were transforming yourself behind the scenes. Day by day, your discipline became sharper. Your awareness became stronger. Your emotional control became deadly. The same silence they mocked started shaping you into someone far more dangerous than they expected. Then something unexpected happened. People started paying attention to your silence more than their own voices. They noticed how calm you stayed under pressure. They noticed how little affected you emotionally. They noticed that while everyone else was losing control, you remained composed. That level of control intimidates people because it reflects inner strength most of them do not have. Lenge now, your silence carries weight. When you speak, people listen carefully because they know you don't waste words. When you walk into a room, your energy says more than long speeches ever could. And the truth is, silence became your greatest weapon because it forced people to underestimate you. Duck while you quietly became stronger than all the noise around you. Most people look powerful when life is easy. They smile when everything works in their favor, speak confidently when they feel safe, and act strong when nothing is testing them. But pressure changes everything. Pressure strips away fake confidence and exposes what truly exists underneath a person's surface. And when life started applying pressure to you, something unexpected happened. Instead of collapsing, you transformed. Banes at first. The weight felt unbearable. Disappointments pursue disappointments. The rations or the stress, the disappointments, the betrayals, and the silent battles in your mind felt like too much for one person to carry. There were nights when your thoughts became louder than the world around you. Nights where nobody understood what you were fighting internally. Everybody saw your face, but nobody saw the pressure sitting behind your eyes. And maybe that's what changed you the most. Learning how to survive battles nobody even knew existed. Pressure has a strange way of revealing character. Weak people panic the moment life becomes uncomfortable. Snorts. They search for shortcuts, excuses, or somebody else to blame. But you slowly became different. Every painful situation forced another layer of strength out of you. Every setback sharpened your mindset. Every betrayal taught you how to read people more carefully. The very things designed to break your spirit ended up building a stronger version of you. Instead, the pressure forced you to adapt. You became mentally sharper because you had no choice. You learned how to stay calm in situations that would destroy other people emotionally. While everybody else reacted with panic, anger, or desperation, you learned how to think clearly under stress. That alone separated you from most people. Because true power is not about controlling perfect situations. True power is staying composed when everything around you feels unstable. There was a moment when you realized something important. The pressure was not your enemy. It was your training ground. Every difficult experience was shaping your endurance, your discipline, and your emotional control. Life kept increasing the weight because you kept surviving what should have crushed you. And the more pressure you handled, the more dangerous your mindset became. You stopped fearing hard moments because hard moments had already transformed you before. People who underestimated you could not understand this transformation. They only saw the calm version of you standing in front of them now. They did not see the sleepless nights, the overthinking, the disappointment, or the emotional battles you survived alone. They didn't witness the internal wars that forced you to become stronger. That's why your presence feels different now. There is hidden pain behind your confidence. There is experience behind your silence. There is survival behind your composure. Band pressure also taught you who people truly are. Some disappeared the second things became difficult. Some secretly enjoyed watching you struggle. Others doubted whether you would survive at all. But pressure revealed something even more important: your own resilience. It showed you that your limits were far beyond what anybody imagined, including yourself. Boom, now you carry yourself differently because you know what you survived. Small problems no longer shake you the way they used to. Drama no longer controls your emotions. Fear no longer controls your emotions. Fear no longer stops your movement. The pressure that was supposed to destroy your confidence ended up creating unshakable mental strength instead. And that is what terrified them in the end. Not just your success, not just your growth, but the realization that pressure didn't weaken you. It revealed your true power. At some point, people stopped seeing you as just another person in the room. Something shifted. The energy changed the moment you walked in. And even the people who pretended not to notice could feel it. You were no longer invisible, no longer easy to overlook. Your presence started carrying a weight that couldn't be ignored, and that terrified the same people who once underestimated you. Tummy ends. The strange thing about real presence is that it doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't beg for attention or force respect. It naturally changes the atmosphere without saying much at all. It's exactly what happened with you. After everything you survived, every lesson you learned, and every battle you fought in silence, your energy became different, sharper, colder, stronger. People could sense that you were no longer the same version they once doubted. Oh, you stopped chasing approval from people who never truly valued you. You stopped shrinking yourself just to make insecure people comfortable. And the second you became fully comfortable with your own power, everything around you started shifting. The same rooms that once ignored your voice suddenly became quiet when you spoke. The same people who laughed too early started watching you more carefully, not because you demanded respect, but because your growth forced them to recognize it. Your presence changed the game because it exposed how fake many people really were. Some only respected confidence when it looked loud and flashy. But your confidence became calm, controlled, and dangerous. You didn't need to dominate conversations to control attention anymore. Your silence alone created pressure. People started overthinking your reactions, studying your expressions, and wondering what was happening inside your mind. That level of psychological control is something most people never achieve. Means what made your presence even more powerful was the fact that it came from experience, not performance. Anybody can fake confidence for a few moments. Anybody can act strong when life feels easy. But your energy came from surviving situations that would mentally destroy weaker people. Every scar, every disappointment, every lonely moment shaped the aura you carry now. That's why people feel something heavy around you even when you barely speak. Mom, the people who once doubted you became uncomfortable because your growth reminded them of their own limitations. They expected you to remain stuck in the same position forever. They expected fear to stop you. They expected pressure to break your spirit. Instead, you evolved quietly while they stayed distracted. And now every achievement, every improvement, and every moment of confidence feels like proof that they completely misjudged you from the start. You also learned something powerful along the way. Presence is not about being feared by everyone. It's about being impossible to ignore. Real presence comes from self-control, emotional discipline, and complete belief in yourself. The moment you stopped needing external validation, your energy became authentic, and authentic energy always changes the environment around it. Now, when you enter a room, people feel it immediately. Some admire it, some envy it. Some become nervous around it because they can sense the mental strength behind your calm expression. But whether they admit it or not, they know one thing for certain. Your presence changed the entire game. Aminius, you are no longer playing by the expectations people created for you. You became something they failed to prepare for. And that realization hit them harder than any words ever could. For the longest time, people only saw the version of you they wanted to believe in. They saw your silence and called you weak. They saw your patience and called you passive. They saw your kindness and assumed you had no edge, no darkness, no power hidden underneath your calm exterior. They built an entire image of you inside their minds without ever truly understanding who you were. And the worst part is they became so confident in their assumptions that they never imagined they could be completely wrong. Polenia. But truth has a dangerous habit of revealing itself over time. Lands you didn't expose yourself through loud speeches or desperate attempts to prove your worth. You revealed yourself through endurance, through growth, through the way you survived situations that were supposed to destroy you mentally. While people were busy underestimating you, life was quietly shaping you into something stronger, sharper, and far more dangerous than they expected. Every betrayal hardened your awareness. Every lonely night strengthened your discipline. Every moment of pressure forced another hidden layer of power to rise to the surface. At first, nobody noticed the transformation happening inside you. Real change is silent in the beginning. It happens behind closed doors, inside painful thoughts, during moments where nobody claps for your progress. While people chase distractions and temporary validation, you were rebuilding your mind piece by piece. You learned how to control your emotions instead of letting emotions control you. You learned how to stay calm while chaos surrounded you. Most important, you learned how to stop seeking approval from people who never truly understood your value in the first place. That changed everything. The version of you standing in front of them now feels completely different because it is different. Your eyes carry experience. Now your silence carries meaning now. Your energy carries weight now. People can feel that you've survived things they know nothing about. And even if they cannot fully explain it, they sense the shift immediately. The same person they once ignored now walks with quiet confidence that cannot be shaken easily. Realization hit them hard, lame, because now they are forced to confront the truth they avoided for so long. You were never ordinary. You were simply evolving in silence while they underestimated you loudly. The strength they see today didn't appear overnight. It was built through pressure, pain, self-control, and survival. While they spent time judging you, you spent time mastering yourself. And there is nothing more intimidating than a person who has learned how to control their own mind under pressure. Some people now admire you quietly because they finally understand your resilience. Others feel uncomfortable around you because your growth exposes their own lack of discipline, and some secretly regret the way they treated you when they thought you had no power. But the most satisfying part is that you no longer need any of them to validate your transformation. Their recognition became irrelevant the moment you stopped doubting yourself. You also started understanding people more clearly. You learned that many individuals only respect visible success. They cannot recognize potential while it is still developing. They only believe in strength after the world confirms it for them. That's why visionaries, leaders, and mentally powerful people are almost always misunderstood in the beginning. Most people judge based on appearances, not depth. They react to what they see on the surface instead of paying attention to what quietly exists underneath. But eventually hidden strength becomes impossible to hide forever. Now your presence speaks before your words do. The calmness in your expression makes people wonder what battles you survived. The discipline in your mindset separates you from the emotional chaos surrounding everyone else. Even your silence feels different because it no longer comes from uncertainty. It comes from control. And maybe the biggest shock for them is realizing how wrong they truly were about you from the start. They expected you to break under pressure. They expected life to crush your confidence. They expected your kindness to make you weak forever. Instead, every difficult experience sharpened you. Every betrayal increased your awareness. Every setback added another layer to your mental strength. Now they finally see who you really are, not the quiet person they underestimated. Not the harmless version they imagined in their minds, but someone forged through pressure, patience, discipline, and survival. Someone who stayed calm while being tested repeatedly by life. Someone who no longer fears opinions, rejection, or temporary failures because they already survived worse internally. And the truth is brutal for them to accept. The person they overlooked from day one became the very person they can no longer ignore. Well. You ever notice how quiet it gets when the truth finally walks in? The same mouths that screamed your name in lies can't even whisper now, huh? Oh, the tables turn. Music, so fast it almost looks like justice wearing your face. They said you were lost. No, you were learning. They said music, were weak. Nah, you were waiting. They said you were fake. Yeah, right. While you were busy being realer than their entire act. You know what's funny? The truth doesn't need to fight. It just waits. And when it shows up, it hits harder than any revenge ever could. This is your moment, not theirs, not the crowd. Yours. You survived every whisper, every rumor, every twisted version of your name. And now everyone can finally see what you always knew, music, deep down. You were never the villain, you were music. Proof that silence can roar louder than gossip. Oh yeah, let them talk. Let them explain why their stories don't match anymore. Let them squirm when people start asking the questions they tried to bury. Because the truth, it doesn't need a spotlight, it is the spotlight. And tonight, it's on you. You've been painted, mocked, doubted, and still stood tall. That's legendary energy. That's strength no rumor can break, no crowd can fake. So don't blink now, don't scroll away. Because what's coming next? Oh, it's not just words, it's a reminder. A reminder of who you really are when the world tries to forget. Stay till the end, because every second of this monologue peels another lie off your name. Every word is a mirror, showing you the truth they tried to hide. So hit that comment section, tell the world who you are. Tell them what you've survived. Because by the end of this, they'll know it too. You are the opposite of what they said. And now the whole world knows they're the liar. They painted you in their colors because they feared what you'd look like in your own. Funny, isn't it? How people love to define others before ever understanding them. They build stories out of thin air and call them truths. They whisper their fears, twist your silence into guilt and your calm into arrogance. The way they choreographed your downfall, so beautifully rehearsed, it almost looked like a performance. And yet, music, here you stand, untouched by the dirt they threw. Because deep down, everyone knows what they said about you was never you. They called you cold because music stopped explaining yourself. They called you arrogant because you refused to kneel. They called you fake because your peace didn't match their chaos. But truth was too heavy for them to music carry. So they built lies light enough to throw. You watched them do it piece by piece. They stitched your name into rumors, dressed it in poison, music, and fed it to every room that would listen. You saw their faces light up when others believed. Oh yeah, they thought that was the end of your story. They thought your silence was surrender, but silence is just the pause before revelation. They never realized you were letting them speak, because lies, when spoken too long, start to sound desperate, and desperation exposes the liar faster than any confession ever could. You didn't need to defend yourself. The truth was doing it for you. Quietly, patiently, unapologetically. And now look around. The same mouths that spread your name with venom can't even say it without shaking. The same eyes that look down on you can't hold your gaze anymore, because time, it doesn't lie. It reveals, it unwraps, it burns away the fake layers until only essence remains. They thought your fall would make them rise, but every time they spoke against you, they built their own cage. Bar, music, by bar, lie by lie. You didn't have to trap them. Their words did it for you. Every accusation, every rumor, it wasn't your destruction. See, the truth doesn't scream. It doesn't fight for the spotlight. It waits. And when it walks in, everything false collapses like dust. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't argue, it just is. You can't out-talk it, outsmart it, or outlast it. You can only hope it doesn't arrive while the crowd's still watching. And oh, when it did, the silence was deafening. The same people who once nodded at lies now look away, pretending they didn't know, pretending they weren't part of it. But they remember. They always remember. Because guilt doesn't wash off that easily. You learn something priceless in that storm. They don't hate you because of who you are. They hate you because of who they pretended you were. You broke their illusion. You reminded them of what real looks like. And real makes pretenders uncomfortable. Real exposes. Real frightens. Real stands tall when rumors crawl. They called you every name that made them feel safe. Because if they could define you, they could control the story. But the story slipped. Oh nah. It didn't just slip, it shattered. And the fragments of their lies are cutting their own hands now. You don't need revenge. You never did. Your existence, authentic, unshaken, is punishment enough. Every breath you take, every calm step you walk reminds them that truth doesn't need defense. It just needs time and time. And it has been kind to you, hasn't it? It showed everyone what you already knew. You were never what they said. You were the test they failed. A lie shouted loud enough will echo, but echoes fade when truth walks in. So they built a story, a loud one designed to drown your silence. Every music furred they crafted was another stone thrown into the still water of your peace. Ripples, noise, distraction. And for a while it worked. People listened. People believed because noise always feels like truth to those who fear quiet. They didn't just lie about you. They needed to, because your presence, your calm, your consistency, music, it reminded them of what they weren't. Their falsehoods weren't born from power. They were born from fear. You didn't threaten them by what you said. You threatened them by what you didn't. You lived right, stood straight, and that alone was enough to make them tremble. Yeah, they saw you walking through the chaos untouched, and it made music them sick. How could someone keep their dignity while being dragged through dirt? How could someone still speak with purpose after being mocked by those who barely knew themselves? That question haunted them, and in their jealousy they found their only weapon, music, deception. But deception has a flaw. It ages fast. Lies lose their shine. You can, music, paint them with fancy words, wrap them in sympathy, even dress them with fake kindness, but once the light of truth hits, they crumble. And right now, those echoes they started, they're turning into whispers, fading, weak, because time has a cruel way of replaying what's real and erasing what's not. They said you were manipulative, yet you never begged for approval. They said you were arrogant, yet you lifted others when they fell. They said you were fake, yet your scars were real enough to make liars blush. Oh nah, they can't run from that, because now everyone sees the contrast. You never needed to expose them. They exposed themselves trying to destroy you. You see, truth doesn't rush. It walks in when all noise has burned itself, music out. It doesn't announce its arrival. It simply stands and everything false bows down out of exhaustion. What they called your downfall is just the quiet rebuilding of your foundation. While they celebrated your supposed defeat, you were learning patience, learning control, learning how to fight without fists. And here's the irony. They called you dangerous because you didn't fight back. Because silence frightens those who live off chaos. They don't know what's coming next, and fear always fills the blanks they can't control. That's when it started turning, didn't it? When their stories began collapsing and their allies began questioning. When the echo they created bounced back and hit them, every whisper they started became a question mark above their name. It's poetic, really. The same mouths that tried to bury you now dig through their own dirt, trying to survive the truth. You don't have to lift a finger. Just keep walking. Their echo is fading fast. When masks crack, faces panic. They thought the silence would bury you. They thought absence would erase you. But the strange thing about truth is, it doesn't vanish. It regenerates. It waits. It grows stronger in the dark. And when it comes back, it doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. Oh wow. That's what happened, didn't it? One by one, their stories started falling apart. Their truths began to contradict. The people who once nodded along to their lies started seeing patterns, little inconsistencies, tiny slips. And just like that, the image they built of you started to fracture. Yeah, you could feel the shift. The same rooms that once whispered about you now grew quiet when you entered. The same people who once looked at you with judgment started looking with curiosity, because deep down they knew they'd been fooled. And nobody hates anything more than realizing they were part of a lie. You didn't need to shout, didn't need to prove, didn't need to remind them. The truth did all the talking for you. Every move you made, every action you took, every calm response, it tore holes in the fabric of their lies. You didn't win through anger, you won through integrity. That's the kind of victory that burns deeper than any revenge ever could. Oh no, they weren't ready for that. They were prepared for a reaction, not resurrection. They expected you to fall apart, not rise in silence. They forgot what's built on truth doesn't crumble. What's built on patience doesn't fade. And now they're trapped in a reality they crafted. Their words are their bars. Their denial is their sentence. And the more they try to rewrite history, the clearer the truth becomes. The beauty of it all, you never had to point fingers. You never had to expose anyone. Life did that. Consequence did that. You just kept walking straight while their paths twisted in circles. And now the crowd that once doubted you is turning their heads, not out of sympathy, but out of respect. Because it takes a certain kind of strength to endure being misunderstood and still not lose your balance. That's what breaks them now. The fact that after all they said, after all they tried, you're still standing, still calm, still real. Because nothing shakes a liar more than seeing the person they tried to destroy still breathing peace. Oh yeah, they can't process that, because if you survive the worst they could create, what could possibly stop you next? And the silence you carry now, it's different. It's not the silence of pain. It's the silence of power. You don't need to clear your name anymore. It's already clear. Their lies are the dirt that washed itself off your shoes. You moved on without them. And that's the loudest message they'll ever hear. Funny, isn't it? They used your name to build their own relevance. Music. And now that the truth has surfaced, your silence has made theirs irrelevant. When truth stops defending itself and starts fighting back, the world grows quiet. It always starts slow. A whisper here, a realization there. One person begins to question the story they were told, then another, and another, until suddenly there's a pause in the noise. Oh wow, that's when it begins. The shift, the awakening. People start seeing what was in front of them all along. The truth doesn't need to roar, it simply reveals. And that revelation, it's heavier than any rumor ever was. Yeah. Now they're running out of excuses. You can see it in their eyes. The same ones who once smirked when you were dragged through dirt now can't even meet your gaze. Their confidence is cracking. The lies they threw at you are circling back like shadows that forgot where they came from. Because that's how it works. Falsehoods never die clean. They rot. They stink. Music. They return. You didn't need to lift a hand. You just needed to stay real. Every act of patience, every step of restraint, it was armor. And now, as their noise dies down, your silence sounds like thunder. Oh nah, they can't cover it anymore. The balance has shifted. The same truth they mocked is now exposing them one by one, quietly, methodically, inevitably. You see, truth doesn't just restore, it reclaims. It takes back every stolen word, every twisted meaning, every label they tried to glue to your name. It corrects the narrative piece by piece. And as it does, something powerful happens. Those who once followed the crowd begin to question the crowd itself. They start asking, why do we believe them? And that question is fatal to deception, because once people see the lie, they can never unsee it. And those who built their identity around your destruction, they start to crumble under the same weight they wished on you. Oh yeah. Now they taste what it feels like to live in the shadow of falsehood. Snorts. The very trap they set became their reality. You don't have to laugh. You don't have to gloat. Just watch. The truth is doing what it always does, restoring balance. And the beauty of your silence is that it's not revenge, it's refinement. You didn't come out of this bitter. You came out clearer, stronger, unmoved by the noise of those who never understood peace. Because truth doesn't harden, it sharpens. It teaches you to move with precision, to choose your words like blades, to strike only when necessary. What they called weakness was actually discipline. What they mocked as silence was actually strength. They confused your calm for defeat, but calm is what comes right before control. And now you hold it, all of it. And now look at you standing right where they said you'd never be. Still breathing, still focused, still you. Oh wow, doesn't it burn them to see? Music, the truth they buried come back louder than ever. Yeah, they tried to erase your name with lies, but the truth doesn't fade. it echoes. And guess what? That echo is shaking the walls of their fake confidence right now. Music. Every rumor they built just crumbled under your silence. Every word they twisted turned into proof of who they really are. Oh no. Don't you dare shrink yourself again. Don't you dare apologize for surviving their story. You earned your peace, your clarity, your power. And now it's not about revenge. It's about presence. About walking so calm that even their guilt can't. Music, stand next to you. You know what's wild? The same people who laughed when you fell are now quiet when you rise. That's how you know it's real. The truth won. It always does. And you became the music example, the evidence, the living reminder that lies only last until the truth learns how to speak. So take a breath, look around, and own this moment. You're not their rumor. You're not their mistake. You're the lesson they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And to everyone who watched till the end, respect. You didn't just listen. You felt it. You've seen the fakes. You felt the hate. And you still showed up for truth. That's rare. That's real. You're part of this energy, the movement that turns silence into strength. So, drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell them you're done being their story. Tell them the truth speaks for itself now. Because when they said you were broken, they forgot one thing. You were never broken. You were becoming. And now that the truth is free, there's no cage left to hold you.